I'm 75 years old now and my hands shake when I pour coffee. My eyes can't read the small print in my medical journals anymore. The stairs to my office creak under my weight like they're complaining about the years. Some mornings I wake up and forget what day it is. But I remember faces, especially the ones I failed. Today is Grace Hayes' wedding day. The whole town's invited, even me. I'm standing at my window overlooking the square, watching them set up tables for the celebration. White cloth snapping in the June breeze, flowers everywhere, bunting strung between the lampposts. The kind of fuss this town loves. Everyone pretending we're civilized. Grace is 20 years old now, strong girl, healthy. She's got her mother's kindness in her eyes and her father's steel in her spine. She's marrying the blacksmith's son. Good man, steady hands. The kind who'll build a life with those hands and never raise them in anger. Her mother stands near the flower table, arranging white roses in mason jars. Nora Hayes, 50 years old, gray streaking through her dark hair, still heavy-set, still moves like a woman who knows the value of work. She's wearing a blue dress I've seen her wear to church. Her hands are steady as she places each flower. Capable hands. Hands that saved a dying baby when this whole town turned its back. Across the square, Thomas Hayes lifts a bench like it weighs nothing. He's 55 now, hair more gray than brown, lines around his eyes from squinting at the sun for 3 decades, but he's still broad-shouldered. Still got that way of standing that says he's not asking permission for anything. He catches Nora's eye across the crowd, smiles. She smiles back. 20 years they've been married, 4 children raised, a ranch that went from dying to thriving, a love that outlasted every prediction this town ever made. They see me watching from my window. Nora waves, Thomas nods. They've forgiven me, I think, or they've chosen to act like they have. Either way, it's more mercy than I deserve. Because 20 years ago I could have saved them, all of them, and I chose not to. I've let people believe I wasn't there the nights that mattered, that I didn't know Thomas needed help, that I had no idea Nora was suffering, but I was there. I knew. And I stood behind my locked door like a coward in a doctor's coat, counting the cost of doing what was right. This is my confession, the story of how I killed 2 people through silence, and how 2 broken souls saved each other anyway, despite me, despite this town, despite everything we did to stop them. It started 20 years ago, spring of 1875, a Saturday morning in late April when the mud was just starting to dry and the whole town gathered for market day. That's when I first saw them together, the desperate widower and the invisible widow, the moment everything changed. Let me take you back. The Saturday market always smelled like fresh bread and horse manure. Spring of 1875, the town square would fill up before the church bells finished ringing 8 o'clock. Farmers brought vegetables. Women brought preserves and pies. The butcher set up his block under a canvas shade. Everyone came to buy and sell and trade gossip, like currency. I was there that morning buying supplies for my office. Bandages from Mrs. Chen, who made them from old sheets. Willow bark from old Martha the herb seller. The usual things a country doctor needs. That's when I saw her. Nora Baker. Widow Baker, as the town called her. She stood behind a wooden table covered with loaves of bread. Good bread, too. I'd bought from her before. She had a talent for it. The kind of talent that comes from necessity. Bread was how she paid her debts at the boarding house where she'd been living since her husband died. Jacob Baker had been kicked in the head by his horse 6 months earlier. Died instantly. The town called it a tragedy. I called it justice. I'd set Nora's broken arm twice during that marriage. Both times she told me she fell. Both times we both knew she was lying. But that morning at the market, Nora stood quiet behind her bread table. Customers came, picked up loaves, dropped coins, took their bread without meeting her eyes. No thank you, no small talk, just the transaction. Like she was a piece of furniture that happened to produce bread. I watched from across the square while I waited for Martha to weigh out my willow bark. Nora was a large woman, heavy through the middle, plain features, dark hair pulled back severe, hands red from kneading dough. She wore a gray dress that had been mended at the elbows. No jewelry, no adornment of any kind. She'd been selling bread for 6 weeks now, ever since her baby died amid, born blue and silent in late March. A month premature. I was there that night. I'd delivered the child myself, a little girl. Cord wrapped around her neck. I told Nora it was stillborn, that there was nothing anyone could have done. I lied. But that's a confession for later. That Saturday morning, Nora arranged her bread like she was arranging stones. Mechanical, efficient, empty. The other vendors didn't speak to her. The customers pretended she didn't exist beyond her function. She'd been rendered invisible, a ghost who baked. I should have spoken to her, should have asked how she was managing, should have done something. I bought my willow bark from Martha and went back to my office. Coward. The screaming started around 10 o'clock. A baby's wail cut through the market noise like a knife through silk. Not a normal cry. This was desperate, dying, the sound an infant makes when life is slipping away and instinct knows it. The crowd parted. A man stumbled into the square on a horse that was lathered and blowing, broad-shouldered, unshaven, eyes wild with exhaustion. His shirt was stained dark with sweat and God knows what else. His hands shook as he held a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. Thomas Hayes. I knew him. Everyone knew him. The rancher who'd punched Reverend Shaw 3 weeks earlier. The man whose wife had died in childbirth because not a single person in 3 counties would come help her. The town had made that decision together. Silent agreement. Let Sarah Hayes die. Teach Thomas a lesson about respect. Now he stood in our market square holding his dying daughter. Please, his voice cracked like dry timber. Someone help. She won't eat. 3 days now. Women stepped back, actually stepped back, like death was contagious. Where's the baby's mother? Someone finally asked. Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house. She knew the answer. Everyone knew, but she asked anyway. Made him say it. Thomas's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. She died in childbirth 3 weeks ago. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Performed surprise. We all knew Sarah Hayes was dead. We'd chosen not to save her. Now we were acting shocked by the consequences. I've been to every wet nurse in 3 counties, Thomas said. His voice was barely above a whisper. Every single one refused. Near the vegetable stand, 2 women whispered loud enough to carry. That's Thomas Hayes, the one who punched the preacher. Got into a fight at the saloon last week, too. Can't control that temper. His wife died because nobody would help him. Town decided he wasn't worth the trouble. Now he expects us to nurse his baby after the way he acts? The women turned away. Others followed their lead. A slow tide of backs turning, of people finding sudden interest in vegetables and bread and anything but the man with the dying child. Thomas heard every word. I saw his fists clench, saw the anger flash across his face like lightning, that famous Hayes temper everyone talked about, the rage that had gotten him into this situation. But then he looked down at his daughter, at her gray skin, her shallow breathing, the way her tiny chest barely moved, and the anger collapsed into something worse, grief, pure and absolute. Please. He wasn't talking to anyone in particular now, just talking, just begging the universe. She's dying. I don't know what else to do. I stood in my office doorway across the square. I had milk powder in my stores. Not ideal for a newborn, but better than nothing. I could have spoken up, could have offered, could have saved that child right then. I didn't. I watched. I observed. I made my calculations. Helping Thomas Hayes would cost me patience. The good families of this town wouldn't appreciate their doctor siding with the man who'd struck a man of God. Business would suffer. My reputation would suffer. So I watched, and I kept my mouth shut. Old Martha saved me from myself. She was 70 years old if she was a day, bent over from decades of gathering herbs in the hills. She stepped forward from her table with her walking stick. That one. She pointed across the square with a gnarled finger. The widow. Lost her own baby a month back. She might still have milk. Every head turned. They looked at Nora Baker standing behind her bread table. Nora's hands had stilled on a loaf. She was staring at Thomas, at the baby, at the tiny bundle that was the same age her own daughter would have been. Thomas crossed the square, boots heavy on the packed dirt, desperate hope fighting with the exhaustion on his face. He stopped in front of Nora's table. Up close, I could see how destroyed he was, unshaven for days, shirt filthy, eyes bloodshot from crying or lack of sleep or both, but his hands were gentle on the baby. The tenderness there was almost painful to witness. "Can you nurse her?" His voice was raw. "Just once, please. I'll pay anything." Nora looked at the dying baby. I saw her hands tremble, saw her eyes fill with tears. Before she could answer, laughter erupted behind her. 3 women from the boarding house, young women, pretty women, the kind the town valued. "The fat widow," one of them said. "You're asking her? She couldn't even keep her own baby alive. Built like that and still lost her child. She's cursed. Maybe she smothered it with all that weight." The market erupted in laughter, cruel laughter, the kind that feels good because it makes someone else smaller, makes your own life feel less miserable by comparison. Thomas spun toward them. His fist rose. The anger was back. That rage everyone feared. Nora grabbed his arm. "Don't!" He froze, looked down at her hand on his arm. His whole body was trembling with barely controlled violence. "They're not worth it," Nora said quietly. Her voice was steady despite the tears on her face. Slowly, Thomas's fist unclenched. He turned back to Nora. "Will you help?" She looked at the baby, at Thomas's desperate eyes, at the crowd watching and judging and waiting for her to fail. She looked at me across the square. Our eyes met. I saw the question there, the plea. "Do something, doctor. Tell them I'm not cursed. Tell them my baby's death wasn't my fault." I looked away. "Coward." Nora turned back to Thomas. "I live at the boarding house, 2 streets over. Bring her there." Relief crashed across Thomas's face like a wave. "You'll try?" "I'll try." Thomas exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 3 days. Maybe he had. "Thank you." Behind them, the whispers exploded like brush fire. "She's taking him to her room, unmarried. Shameless. Desperate fat widow throwing herself at the first man who'll look at her." Nora didn't look back. She packed her unsold bread into a basket, started walking. Thomas followed close behind, cradling his daughter like she was made of glass. At the boarding house steps, he stopped. "I don't even know your name." "Nora." "Thomas Hayes." He shifted the baby to one arm, extended his hand. "Thank you for not turning away." She took his hand, shook it. "Don't thank me yet. I don't know if I can help." "You're trying. That's more than anyone else did." They went inside. The boarding house girls watched from the kitchen doorway, whispering, already planning how to use this against Nora, already calculating the social currency of scandal. I stood in my office doorway, watching it all, recording it, making my observations. And I thought about 3 weeks earlier, when Thomas Hayes had come to my door in the middle of the night, pounding, begging. His wife was in labor. Something was wrong. She was screaming, bleeding, dying. I'd stood behind my locked door, hand on the bolt, listening to him beg, and I hadn't opened it. I'd let Sarah Hayes die, let that baby girl grow up without a mother. All because I was afraid of what helping Thomas Hayes would cost me. Now he was in Nora Baker's room, hoping she could save the child I'd helped orphan. I went back to my office, closed the door, sat at my desk. And I did what I always did when confronted with my own cowardice. I counted my coins, balanced my ledger, pretended I was a man of science and reason, not a coward who'd let a woman die rather than risk his reputation. That was the day it started. Thomas and Nora, the dying baby, the beginning of everything. That was the day I should have acted, should have helped, should have been the doctor I'd sworn to be. Instead, I was the man I'd become, the one who watched, who observed, who stood behind locked doors while people died. The man who saved hundreds of lives in 43 years, but killed 2 people with silence. Nora's room was in the attic, 3rd floor. The servants' quarters back when the boarding house had been a proper family home. Now it was where Mrs. Henderson put the ones who couldn't afford better. I heard about what happened next from 3 different sources over the years. Nora told me some of it when I delivered her 2nd child. Thomas told me the rest one night when he was drunk on wedding whiskey, and Mrs. Henderson's girls spread their version all over town before the sun set that Saturday. But I'll tell you what really happened. The truth under all the gossip. Nora led Thomas up the narrow stairs. Each step creaked. The boarding house girls gathered in the hallway below like vultures circling. Their whispers followed the 2 of them up. "Give it an hour, he'll come back down alone. The baby will probably die anyway. At least she'll get paid for trying." Nora's room was small, a single bed with an iron frame, a wooden chair by the window, a cracked mirror on the wall, a trunk at the foot of the bed holding everything she owned. The ceiling slanted where it met the roof. You could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out, but it was clean. Nora kept it clean. It was the one thing in her life she could control. Thomas stood in the center of the room holding his daughter, looking lost, looking like a man who'd been drowning for 3 weeks and just now broke the surface. "Sit," Nora said quietly. She pulled the wooden chair away from the window, set it in the center of the room where the light was best. Thomas sat, still cradling Grace like she might shatter. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. The man probably hadn't slept more than an hour at a time since Sarah died. Nora took the baby carefully. So light, too light. 3 weeks old, and she weighed less than a sack of flour. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. The gray tint to her skin was the color I'd seen 100 times in my practice. The color that meant time was running out. Nora sat on the edge of her bed, started unbuttoning her dress with one hand while supporting Grace with the other. Her fingers fumbled. She was nervous. Of course she was nervous. A strange man in her room. A dying baby in her arms. The weight of being someone's last hope. Thomas turned away, gave her privacy, stared at the cracked plaster wall like it held secrets. "You can watch," Nora said. "She's your daughter. You should see." Thomas turned back, slowly. His eyes were wet. Nora brought Grace to her breast. The baby's mouth moved, searching. Weak little movements like a bird fallen from the nest. Trying. Failing. For a long moment nothing happened. Nora's milk had been drying up. 3 weeks since her own baby died. 3 weeks of her body producing food for a child who would never eat. It had been painful at first, then just sad, then finally starting to fade. But now Grace's mouth found purpose, and Nora's body remembered what it was made to do. The milk came. Grace latched, weak at first, then stronger, her tiny throat working, swallowing, drinking, living. Thomas made a sound, half sob, half gasp, a sound I don't have words for, the sound a man makes when he watches his daughter choose life. "She's drinking," his voice broke. "Oh God, she's drinking." Tears streamed down his face. He didn't wipe them away, just let them fall like rain after a drought, like he'd been holding them back for 3 weeks and finally had permission to break. Nora's own tears fell silent. Different tears. Not relief, not yet. Something deeper, more complicated. For 3 weeks her body had made milk for a baby who would never drink it. Her breasts had ached, had leaked, had reminded her every single day that she'd failed, that her daughter had died, that her body was useless. Now a baby lived because of her, not useless, not cursed, needed. Thomas sank to the floor beside the chair, not sitting, just collapsing. His shoulders shook. He put his face in his hands and wept like a child. "I thought I'd lost her," he said between sobs. "Like I lost Sarah. I thought God was taking everything, taking everyone, punishing me for being what I am. Nora said nothing. What was there to say? She just rocked. Just let Grace drink. Just existed in this moment where she was enough. Outside, the sun moved across the sky. I was in my office 2 streets over, seeing patients. Mrs. Chen with her rheumatism. Young Billy Morrison who'd stepped on a nail. Normal Saturday afternoon work. But I kept thinking about that room. That attic room where a miracle was happening. A miracle I could have facilitated if I'd had courage. A miracle that was happening despite me. Inside that small room with the slanted ceiling, 3 broken people found their first moment of peace in weeks. A man who'd been told he was too angry to deserve help. A woman who'd been told she was too fat to deserve love. And a baby who'd been sentenced to death by a town's collective cruelty. All 3 of them breathing. All 3 of them living. All 3 of them proving us wrong. When Grace finally stopped drinking, her color had changed. Not gray anymore. Pink. The pink of life. Of blood moving. Of a heart that decided to keep beating. Her breathing was deeper, steadier, her tiny fists unclenched. She made a small sound. Not quite a cry, more like a sigh. The sigh of an infant who'd been starving and was finally full. Thomas looked up at Nora. His face was wet, his eyes were red. But for the first time in 3 weeks, there was something other than desperation in them. Hope. You saved her life. Nora handed Grace back carefully, buttoned her dress. She'll need to eat again in a few hours. Thomas stood, cradled his daughter against his chest. Grace's head nestled in the hollow of his shoulder like she belonged there, like she knew she was safe now. Can I bring her back? Nora hesitated. The boarding house matron would be furious. The girls would mock her endlessly. The whole town would have opinions about a widow letting a man come to her room. But the baby was alive. Yes. Thomas paused at the door, turned back. They were wrong about you. The women at the market, you're not cursed. Nora looked down. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He shifted Grace slightly. Because my daughter is alive. And that's not a curse. That's a miracle. He left, his boots heavy on the stairs. Nora sat alone in her small room. Outside, she could hear the boarding house girls laughing, gossiping, waiting for her to fail, waiting for Thomas Hayes to realize she wasn't worth coming back for. But for the first time in 6 weeks, Nora didn't feel powerless. She'd saved a life today. And tomorrow Thomas Hayes would come back. Not because he had to, because he needed her. Maybe that was enough. I heard about the miracle that evening. Old Martha came to my office just before I closed up. She didn't knock. Just walked in, set her walking stick against my desk, fixed me with eyes that had seen 70 years of this town's sins. The widow saved the baby, she said, with the milk meant for her own dead child, while you, doctor, sit in your office counting coins. I looked up from my ledger. I'm glad the child survived. Are you? Martha leaned on her stick. Or are you just relieved you won't have another death on your conscience? I said nothing. What could I say? She was right. Martha turned to leave, paused at the door. Thomas Hayes will come back. He'll keep coming back, and this town will have opinions about it. You should decide now what kind of man you want to be when that happens. She left. I sat at my desk, staring at my ledger, at the neat columns of numbers, at the record of every patient I'd seen that week, every coin I'd collected, every respectable transaction. I'd delivered Nora's baby. I'd been there that night. The cord was wrapped around the infant's neck, but there'd been a heartbeat when she was born, weak, irregular. But there, I could have tried harder, could have massaged the tiny chest, cleared the airway, warmed the body, given that baby girl a fighting chance. I didn't. I looked at that struggling infant, and I made a calculation. This child would be born to poverty, to a mother with nothing, a father who'd just died in a drunken accident, to a town that wouldn't lift a finger to help. And I let the heartbeat stop. I told Nora the baby was stillborn, that there was nothing anyone could have done. I lied. And she believed me, because who questions a doctor? Now that same mother was saving Thomas Hayes's daughter with milk her body had made for the child I let die. I counted my coins that night, counted them twice, like always. Coward. Thomas returned at sunset. The boarding house girls were gathered in the kitchen when he knocked. Sharp eyes, sharper tongues. They scattered to watch through doorways as Nora answered. Thomas stood on the porch, baby in his arms. Grace looked better. Pink cheeks, stronger cry. Actually crying now, instead of that weak mewling from the morning. "She's hungry again," he said. Nora glanced at the girls watching from the shadows, their eyes judging, recording, building their arsenal of gossip. She stepped aside. "Come in." The whispers started immediately. Second time today. This is completely improper. She's practically throwing herself at him. Nora led Thomas upstairs again, each step feeling heavier under the weight of their stares. In her room, she nursed Grace while Thomas sat on the floor, back against the wall. "I need to ask you something," he said quietly. Nora looked up, waited. "Come to my ranch, just for a few weeks, until she's stronger." Nora's hands stilled on Grace. "Thomas, I can't do this alone anymore," his voice cracked. "Riding here twice a day. The ranch is falling apart. I haven't slept more than an hour at a time since Sarah died. I need help, not just with her, with everything." He leaned forward. "I'll pay you proper wages, give you your own room, your own space. I'm not asking for anything improper. I just need help." Nora looked down at Grace, nursing contentedly. "The town will talk." "They already are." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Let them talk. I don't care what they say anymore. My wife died because this town decided I wasn't worth helping. They can think whatever they want." He met her eyes. "I'm asking you, will you come?" Nora thought about her attic room, about the mocking, about the loneliness, about having nowhere else to go and nothing else to offer the world except the milk in her breasts. "I'll come." Thomas's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a while, Grace drinking, Thomas watching. Nora feeling something shift inside her chest. Not love, not yet, but something. Recognition, maybe. Two people who'd been broken by the same town. Two people who needed each other in ways that had nothing to do with desire. Outside, the boarding house girls lined up in the hallway, listening, counting minutes, building their case against the fat widow who thought she could catch a man. But inside that small room, something was being built that they couldn't touch, couldn't understand, couldn't destroy. A foundation. The next morning was Sunday. The town went to church. I saw Thomas and Nora from my office window. They didn't attend. Thomas wasn't welcome in Reverend Shaw's church, not after he'd struck a man of God. And Nora, well, the boarding house girls had made sure everyone knew about her improper visitor. Instead, Thomas came to the boarding house 3 times that day, morning, afternoon, evening, each time carrying Grace, each time going upstairs to Nora's room, each time the whispers grew louder. By Monday morning, the whole town knew. The fat widow and the angry rancher, living in sin, they said. Never mind that she lived at the boarding house and he lived 3 miles out of town. Never mind that he came for his daughter, not for her. Didn't matter. The town had made its judgment. I watched it happen from my window, watched the women cluster at the general store, watched them lean close, watched them build their narrative. The desperate widow, the violent man, the scandal. No one mentioned that a baby had been dying, that Nora had saved her, that Thomas had nowhere else to turn. Those facts didn't fit the story they wanted to tell. On Tuesday, I made a house call to check on Grace. Thomas had sent word, wanted to make sure the baby was thriving. I found them in Nora's room. Grace was sleeping in a basket Nora had lined with blankets. Pink, healthy, gaining weight. Nora was sewing, letting out one of Grace's gowns. The baby was already outgrowing the clothes Sarah had made. Thomas sat in the chair by the window, watching Nora work. There was something in his face I hadn't seen in weeks. Peace, maybe, or the beginning of it. "Doctor," he said when I came in. Stood. Shook my hand. No accusation in his eyes. He didn't know. Didn't know I'd been there the night Sarah died. Didn't know I'd let her die rather than risk my practice. "The baby looks well," I said. I checked Grace. Listened to her heart. Strong. Steady. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "It's all Nora," Thomas said. He looked at her when he said it. "She's saving her." Nora kept sewing. Didn't look up. But I saw the faint color in her cheeks. Not used to being praised. Not used to being seen. I left them there, went back to my office, wrote in my notes that Grace Hayes was recovering, that the wet nurse arrangement was working. I didn't write about the way Thomas looked at Nora, didn't write about the peace in that room, didn't write about my own guilt burning in my chest. Some things don't belong in medical records. Wednesday morning, Thomas came to Nora's room early, before breakfast. She was still in her nightgown when he knocked, threw a shawl over her shoulders, opened the door. "I need to ask you again," Thomas said. No preamble. "Come to the ranch. Today, please. I can't keep doing this. Can't keep leaving her. Can't keep riding back and forth. The ranch is dying. I'm dying. I need help." Nora looked at him. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion carved into his face, the desperation, the breaking point. "All right," she said. "I'll pack." Relief flooded Thomas's features. "Thank you." "But I owe Mrs. Henderson 3 months' room and board," Nora said. $50. "I don't have it." Thomas pulled out his wallet without hesitation. "I'll pay it." "Thomas, you're saving my daughter's life. $50 is nothing." An hour later, Nora came downstairs with her small bag. One extra dress, her mother's hairbrush, a Bible. Everything she owned in the world fit in a canvas sack. The boarding house girls lined the hallway, watching, whispering. "Going to play house with the angry rancher. He'll send you back within a week. Fat girls always get sent back." Mrs. Henderson appeared from the kitchen, blocked the door. "You're leaving then?" "Yes, ma'am." "You owe 3 months' room and board. $50. Nora's stomach dropped. She'd forgotten. Had been so focused on Grace, on leaving, on the possibility of something different, that she'd forgotten the debt. "I'll pay it when I can," she said. Mrs. Henderson's eyes gleamed. "You'll pay it now, or you'll stay until it's worked off." Thomas appeared in the doorway, baby Grace in his arms. His presence filled the small entryway. He wasn't a large man, but he had that way of standing that made him seem bigger, made the room feel smaller. "How much does she owe?" Mrs. Henderson's smile was sharp. $50. Thomas pulled out his wallet, didn't hesitate, didn't negotiate, just counted bills. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Handed them over. 60. That covers her debt and compensates you for the inconvenience. Mrs. Henderson stared at the money in her hand. $60. A fortune. More than any of the girls in this house had ever been paid for anything. Thomas turned to Nora. "You're free. Let's go." He walked out. Didn't wait to see if she'd follow. Just assumed she would. And she did. Outside, a wagon waited. Thomas helped Nora up, his hand steady at her back. Not grabbing, not forcing, just supporting, like she was worth supporting. Then he handed her Grace, climbed up himself, took the reins. As they rolled away, Nora heard the girls' voices fading behind them. Did he just pay her debt? $60? For her? Maybe he really is desperate. But there was something else in their voices now. Not just mockery, confusion, maybe even a touch of envy, because no one had ever paid $60 for any of them. No one had ever declared their worth in cold, hard cash, in front of witnesses. Thomas Hayes just had. The wagon rolled through town, Sunday quiet streets. People stared, whispered. A few called out, "Thomas!" "What are you doing?" "You can't just—" He didn't answer, didn't stop, just drove, eyes forward, jaw set. Nora kept her eyes forward, too, Grace in her arms. The baby made small sounds, content sounds, full belly, safe arms. "They're going to make your life difficult," Nora said quietly. Thomas's jaw tightened. They already did. The day they let my wife die. This doesn't change anything. They rode in silence for a while. The town falling away behind them. Open country ahead. Grassland, rolling hills, mountains in the distance. The ranch isn't much, Thomas said. It's messy. I haven't had time to keep up with things. I can help with that, Nora said. He glanced at her. I'm hiring you to nurse Grace, not to clean my house. I know. Nora shifted Grace in her arms. But I need to feel useful for more than just my body. I need to work. It's the only thing that keeps me from thinking about... She stopped, couldn't finish. About my daughter. About holding her dead in my arms. About the empty ache in my chest that never goes away. Thomas nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. Fair enough. More silence. Comfortable this time. The wagon creaked. The horse's hooves made a steady rhythm. Wind moved through the grass. Your room is off the kitchen, Thomas said. It was the hired hand's room before. It has a lock on the inside. Nora looked at him. He kept his eyes on the road, but his meaning was clear. You're safe. I won't touch you. The lock is for your protection, not my convenience. Thank you, she said. The ranch appeared over a hill, Nora's first sight of what would become her home. It was bigger than she'd expected, a solid house, stone foundation, wood frame, good bones, a barn that needed work, fences that sagged, garden overrun with weeds, chickens running loose everywhere. The ranch was dying, slowly. Like Thomas had been dying, like Grace had been dying. Everything here was in the process of giving up, but not dead yet. Thomas pulled the wagon to a stop, sat for a moment, looking at his home with what might have been shame or exhaustion, or both. I know it's bad, he said. It's not bad. Nora looked at the house, at the mountains behind it. At the creek she could hear running somewhere nearby. It's grief. Thomas turned to her. Something in his eyes shifted, like she'd said the one thing he needed to hear. He climbed down, came around, helped Nora down with one hand while holding Grace with the other. His hand was warm, calloused, steady. Inside the house was chaos. Dishes stacked everywhere, dust on every surface, baby things scattered across the main room, clothes piled on chairs, the remnants of a man trying to keep a newborn alive while his world fell apart. Sarah's things were still everywhere, her shawl on a hook, her sewing basket by the fireplace, her presence like a ghost. Nora felt it, the weight of stepping into a dead woman's home, of being the living woman who would take her place, not in Thomas's heart, not yet, maybe never, but in her space, in her kitchen, in her role. Thomas showed her to the room off the kitchen, small, but with a window, a real bed, a chest of drawers. It's perfect, Nora said. He nodded, set Grace in her cradle. I'll make dinner, such as it is. I can cook, Nora offered. Tomorrow, Thomas said. Tonight you've traveled. Rest. But Nora couldn't rest, couldn't sit still, couldn't watch the chaos around her without doing something. While Thomas made a sad attempt at beans and cornbread, Nora washed dishes. Just a few, just enough to have clean plates for dinner. When Thomas came in from feeding the horses, she'd swept the floor, folded the clothes, made space. He stopped in the doorway. You didn't have to do that. I know. I hired you for Grace. I know. Nora kept folding. But I need to work, and this needs doing, so I did it. Thomas picked up a rag, started drying dishes beside her. They worked in silence, side by side, not speaking, just existing together in the simple rhythm of work. When the kitchen was clean, Thomas made coffee, set a cup in front of Nora without asking how she took it. Thank you, she said quietly. You're good at this, taking care of things. My mother taught me, before she died. And your husband? Nora's hand stilled on her coffee cup. He taught me that not all men are kind. Thomas went quiet, the weight of those words settling between them like stones. I'm sorry, he said. It's over now. He's gone. They sat in the gathering darkness, Grace sleeping between them in her cradle. The house quiet for the first time in weeks. The chaos pushed back, just a little, just enough. For the first time since Sarah died, Thomas's house didn't feel empty. For the first time since her baby died, Nora felt like she belonged somewhere. Outside, the ranch settled into evening quiet, stars emerging, coyotes starting their distant songs, the creek running steady. Inside, 3 broken people began to heal. But healing isn't easy, isn't simple, isn't quick. And this town wasn't done with them yet, not even close. That night, Nora locked her door, not because she was afraid of Thomas, but because fear was a habit. Because Jacob had taught her that locked doors were safety, that men were dangerous in the dark. She lay in her narrow bed, listened to the house, heard Thomas moving in his room, heard him pause outside her door, not trying the handle, just pausing, like he was making sure she was there, making sure he wasn't alone. Then his footsteps moved away. An hour later, she heard crying, soft, muffled. A man trying not to make noise while his heart broke. Nora sat up, put her hand on the door, wanted to open it, wanted to go to him, wanted to say something that would help. But she didn't know what to say, didn't know if she had the right, didn't know if opening that door would mean something she wasn't ready for it to mean. So she stayed, hand on the wood, listening to Thomas Hayes weep for his dead wife, and she wept too, for her dead daughter, for all the ways they'd both been broken. 2 people drowning in separate rooms, not knowing the other was just as scared, just as lost, just as desperate for something to hold on to. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent, eternal. Tomorrow they'd wake up, start again, learn to live in this house together, learn to be what each other needed. But tonight, they were still strangers, still separate, still locked behind their own doors, still waiting for courage to let someone in. The first week, they were strangers who happened to live in the same house. Thomas woke before dawn, made coffee, drank it on the porch while the sun came up. Then he'd go out to tend the cattle or mend fences or do whatever crisis needed doing that day. There was always a crisis, always something breaking. The ranch was bleeding out slowly, and he was one man trying to stop the hemorrhage with his bare hands. Nora woke when Grace cried, fed her, changed her, then she'd start on the house. Dishes, sweeping, laundry. The endless work of keeping things from falling apart completely. They barely spoke. "Good morning. Coffee's made. Thank you." Small words, polite words. The words of people sharing space, not lives. At night, they ate whatever Nora had managed to cook. Thomas would praise it, even when it was just beans and cornbread. Then he'd go to his room. She'd go to hers, doors would close, locks would turn. 2 people in a house, alone together. I didn't see them that first week. They didn't come to town, didn't go to church. Thomas sent word through old Martha that Grace was thriving. That was all. But Martha told me other things, how Nora was fixing the place up, how Thomas looked less like a ghost, how the baby was gaining weight every day, and how the town was watching. Always watching. Thursday of the first week, Nora found the chicken coop. It was a disaster. Broken nesting boxes, rotting straw. Hens scattered everywhere, stressed and barely laying. The whole structure was falling apart. She found tools in the barn, hammer, nails, saw. Her father's tools had felt like this, heavy, real, purposeful. Jacob had told her women shouldn't touch tools, had slapped her hands when she tried to help him fix the porch. Women's work was inside, he'd said. Soft work, quiet work. Her father had taught her different, had shown her how to measure twice and cut once, how to drive a nail straight, how to build something that would last. She rebuilt that chicken coop like she was rebuilding herself, board by board, nail by nail, making something broken into something whole. Thomas found her 2 hours later. She was covered in dirt and feathers, sweat running down her face despite the cool spring air. The coop was clean, fixed, new slats hammered into place, fresh straw everywhere. The hens already looked calmer. He stopped in his tracks, just stared. "What are you doing?" Nora looked up, hammer still in her hand. "Fixing your coop. The hens weren't laying because they were stressed." "I was going to get to that." "I know." She drove another nail. "But you're one person doing the work of three, and I'm here, and I know how to work." Thomas watched her finish the last repair. She stood, brushed dirt off her dress, surveyed her work with something like satisfaction. "Where did you learn carpentry?" he asked. "My father taught me. Before he died, before I married a man who told me women shouldn't touch tools." She looked at Thomas, challenging, waiting for him to say she'd overstepped, that she should have asked, that this wasn't her place. He didn't. "The hens will lay again now," Nora said. "You'll have eggs by tomorrow." Thomas stepped closer, looked at the coop, at the clean lines, the solid work. "Thank you." "I'm not helpless, Thomas. Just because I'm big doesn't mean I'm useless." He met her eyes. "I never thought you were useless." Something passed between them. Not love, not yet, but recognition. The way soldiers recognize each other after a battle. "You survived too. You're still standing." "I should get back to Grace," Nora said. "Nora." She turned. Thomas's hand was on the fence post, not moving toward her, just grounded there. "You don't owe me this work. I hired you to nurse Grace, not to fix my ranch." "I know what you hired me for," Nora said. "But I need to be more than that. I need to be worth something beyond what my body can do." She walked back to the house, left Thomas standing by the chicken coop, staring after her. That night at dinner he said, "You were right. The hens laid 6 eggs this morning." Nora smiled, small but real. It was the first time he'd seen her smile. The second week, they started talking. Not much, not deep, just talking. About the weather, about Grace, about the work that needed doing. But it was more than polite words. It was conversation, the beginning of something. Saturday of the second week, Nora was pulling weeds in the garden when Thomas came back from town with supplies. He'd been gone since dawn. Came back looking tense. "Bad trip?" she asked. Thomas tied up the horse, started unloading bags. "Saw Reverend Shaw. He made sure I knew what he thought about our arrangement." "What did he say?" "Nothing I'll repeat in front of you." Thomas carried a flour sack to the porch. "But the gist was that I'm living in sin, that you're a temptation sent by the devil, that I should send you back before I corrupt us both further." Nora pulled another weed. "What did you say?" "Nothing." Thomas came back for another bag. I counted to 10, then 20. Then I walked away before I hit another man of God. "That must have taken effort." "You have no idea." But there was almost a smile in his voice. They worked in silence for a bit. Thomas unloading, Nora weeding, Grace sleeping in a basket in the shade. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said. "Yes." "Why did you say yes when I asked you to come here? You could have refused, could have stayed at the boarding house, but you said yes. Why?" Nora sat back on her heels, thought about it. "Because for the first time in my life, someone needed me for something I could actually give, not for cooking or cleaning or other things. For something only I could do. Grace needed milk. I had milk. It was simple." She pulled another weed. "And because I had nowhere else to go, nothing else to be, at least here, I'm useful." Thomas set down the bag he was holding. "You're more than useful, Nora." She looked up at him. He was standing in the sun, backlit, his face in shadow. But she could hear something in his voice, something new. "You're capable," he said, "strong. You work harder than any hired hand I've ever had. You've fixed half this ranch in a week. You're—" He stopped, searching for words. "You're good at being alive, at making things better. I don't know how else to say it." Nora felt something catch in her chest, tears threatening. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Jacob had told her she was lazy, useless, too fat to be worth anything. "Thank you," she managed. Thomas nodded, went back to unloading. But something had shifted. Some wall had gotten a little shorter. That night they sat on the porch after Grace went to sleep, drinking coffee, watching stars emerge. "Tell me about your father," Thomas said. The one who taught you carpentry." So she did. Told him about her father the carpenter, how he'd wanted a son but got a daughter and decided to teach her anyway, how they'd built her mother's garden trellis together, how he'd died when she was 17, how she'd married Jacob 6 months later because she had no one else. "I didn't love him," she said. "Jacob, I was just alone and scared. And he seemed kind at first. When did he change?" 2 weeks after the wedding." Nora's voice was flat. "He came home drunk. I'd burned dinner. He hit me, said it was my fault, that I'd made him do it." Thomas said nothing, just listened. "It got worse after that. He'd hit me for anything, for nothing. I learned to be quiet, to be small, to disappear." "Why didn't you leave?" "Where would I go? My father was dead. My mother was dead. Jacob controlled the money, controlled everything. And the town—" She stopped, swallowed. "The town knew. Everyone knew. But no one did anything. They said it was between husband and wife, that I must have done something to deserve it." Thomas's hands were fists on his knees. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He's dead. Kicked in the head by the horse he was beating. I should feel guilty for being glad about that, but I don't. I'm just relieved." They sat in silence. The night sounds around them, crickets, distant coyotes, the creek running steady. "Sarah died because of me," Thomas said suddenly. Nora turned to him. "I hit Reverend Shaw," Thomas continued. "He'd been saying things about Sarah for months, that she came from nothing, that she was beneath me, that I'd married down. Sarah would come home crying. I'd tell her to ignore him, that his words didn't matter." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then one day she was sick, some kind of fever. Shaw came to visit, said he'd pray for her. I heard him through the window. He told her God was punishing her for thinking she was good enough for me, that her sickness was his judgment." Thomas's voice went hard. "I went in there and I hit him. One punch. Broke his nose. Felt good doing it too." "Good," Nora said. Thomas looked at her, surprised. "He deserved it," she said. "More than one punch, probably. Maybe, but it cost me everything. The town took his side. When Sarah went into labor 3 weeks later, no one would come. Not the midwife, not Dr. Walsh, no one. They let her die, to teach me a lesson about respect." His voice broke. "She died screaming my name, begging me to make it stop. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't save her. I just held her hand and watched her die." Nora reached over, put her hand on his. It was the first time she'd touched him deliberately, not accidentally while passing grace, not practical contact, just comfort. Thomas didn't pull away. "When Grace finally came," he said, "Sarah was already gone. She never even got to hold her, never got to see her daughter's face." "I'm sorry," Nora said. "Sometimes I think she blamed me, in those last moments, for my anger, for making this town hate us enough to let her die." "No," Nora squeezed his hand. "She didn't blame you. This town killed her. They chose to let her die. That's not on you." Thomas looked at their joined hands. "He told me I was a monster. Shaw did, after I hit him. Said I had the devil's temper, that I'd hurt Sarah eventually, that men like me always do." "You're not a monster." "How do you know?" "Because I lived with a monster for 5 years, and you're nothing like him." Nora's voice was firm. "A monster would have taken advantage by now, would have assumed I owed him. You gave me a room with a lock. You ask before you come near me. You treat me like I'm worth something. That's not a monster. That's a good man who got pushed too far." They sat like that, hands touching, not romantic, just human. Two people who'd been beaten down by the world, finding comfort in not being alone. Eventually, they went to their separate rooms, closed their separate doors. But something had changed. The walls were getting shorter. Sunday, the town went to church. Thomas and Nora didn't, but they heard about the sermon. Old Martha came by Monday with herbs, told them what Reverend Shaw had said. "He preached on sin dwelling under one roof," Martha said. She was mixing a poultice for Thomas's horse that had gone lame. Talked about how wickedness spreads when good people do nothing, how the town must defend its morals. He mention us by name? Thomas asked. Didn't have to. Everyone knew who he meant. Martha's hands worked the herbs. Mrs. Henderson was there. She stood up after service, said she's organizing the women to intervene, to save Nora from her own poor judgment. Nora's stomach tightened. What does that mean? Means they're coming. Martha looked at her. Soon. They'll try to take you back. Say you're being corrupted, being taken advantage of. I'm not. I know that, but they don't care about truth. They care about appearances. Martha finished the poultice, handed it to Thomas. You two should be careful. This town is looking for an excuse. After Martha left, Thomas paced. Maybe you should go back, just for a while, until things settle. No. Nora, no. She was nursing Grace in the kitchen chair. I'm not going back there. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of thinking they scared me. They could make things very hard for you. They already did. They mocked me when my baby died. They called me cursed. They let me starve while I paid off a debt to a woman who hates me. Nora looked up at Thomas. I'm not going back. Not for them. Not for anyone. Thomas stopped pacing, looked at her. Something in his eyes shifted. All right, then we face them together. Together, Nora agreed. That week, Nora found Sarah's diary. She was cleaning the bedroom. Thomas had been sleeping in the spare room since Sarah died. Couldn't bear to sleep in their bed. But Nora thought maybe if the room was clean, less full of dust and grief, he could move back. The diary was in a drawer of the bedside table, leather-bound, Sarah's name on the front in faded gold letters. Nora shouldn't have read it. She knew that. It was private, sacred. But she opened it anyway. Sarah's handwriting was neat, feminine. The entries were daily life, small observations, garden notes, thoughts about Thomas. Thomas brought me wildflowers today. He doesn't know I saw him picking them, choosing each one carefully. He tries so hard to show me he loves me, as if I couldn't see it in everything he does. Nora felt tears building. This was a woman who'd been loved, who'd been cherished, who'd died knowing she was precious. I'm afraid the baby feels different this time. Something's wrong, but I can't tell Thomas. He worries enough already. The entries got shorter, more scared. Thomas hit the Reverend today. Shaw said I wasn't good enough for Thomas, said it to my face. Thomas lost his temper, I understand why, but I'm afraid of what it will cost us. Then the final entry, the day before she went into labor. If you're reading this and I'm gone, Thomas, love again. Please, you have so much love in you. Don't let it die with me. Find someone who sees how good you are. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you. Don't mourn me forever. Live, love, be the man I know you are. Nora was sobbing by the time she finished. Great heaving sobs, crying for Sarah, for Thomas, for the love they'd had and lost. Thomas found her like that, sitting on Sarah's side of the bed, holding the diary, tears streaming. I'm sorry, Nora choked out. I shouldn't have read it. I was just cleaning and I found it and I... Thomas sat down beside her, took the diary gently, looked at the open page. Sarah's final words. She would want you to read it, he said quietly. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He ran his fingers over the writing. She was generous, even with her memories. She'd want someone to know how much love there was here. They sat together, looking at Sarah's handwriting. Her final gift to her husband. Permission to live, to love, to move forward. She sounds wonderful, Nora said. She was. Thomas closed the diary. Kind, patient, put up with me when I didn't deserve it. I think you deserved it. Thomas looked at her. You didn't know me then. I know you now, and I know a man who's gentle with a baby, who's patient with a woman learning to trust again, who works himself to exhaustion, trying to keep a ranch alive for his daughter's future. Nora met his eyes. That man deserves love. Something passed between them, heavy, undeniable. Sarah wrote that I should find someone who sees how good I am, Thomas said. His voice was rough. I think maybe I have. Nora's breath caught. Thomas stood up quickly. I should check the fences. He left. Fast. like he'd said too much, like he'd scared himself. Nora sat alone in Sarah's room, holding the diary, feeling something bloom in her chest that she didn't dare name yet. Hope. I made a house call that week, Thursday. Thomas had sent word through Martha that he wanted me to check Grace, make sure she was developing properly. I rode out to the ranch. First time I'd been there since Sarah died. The place looked different, better. Chicken coop fixed, garden weeded, fences mended. The house itself seemed cleaner, lighter, like someone had opened windows and let the grief out. Nora answered the door. She looked different too. Not just cleaner clothes and combed hair, something in her face, a softness that hadn't been there before. "Doctor," she said, "thank you for coming. How's the baby? See for yourself. Grace was in a cradle in the kitchen, 2 months old now, pink and healthy, gaining weight, strong lungs. She grabbed my finger when I checked her reflexes, held on tight. She's perfect," I said. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "It's all Nora," Thomas said. He'd come in from the barn. "She's saving her." The way he said Nora's name, the way he looked at her when he said it, I saw it. The beginning of something. Not love yet, but the path that would lead there. Nora served us coffee, stood back while Thomas and I talked. But I noticed small things. The way Thomas made sure she had a chair. The way he poured her coffee without asking how she took it. The way they moved around each other in the small kitchen without bumping, like they'd learned each other's rhythms. "The town's talking," I said. Might as well be direct. "The town's always talking," Thomas said. "Shaw's making it worse, preaching about sin, about moral corruption." "Shaw can go to hell." Thomas's voice was flat. "He's the reason Sarah's dead. If anyone's corrupted, it's him. I'm just warning you, they might try to force the issue." "Let them try." Thomas set his cup down hard. "I'm done caring what this town thinks. They made their choice when they let my wife die. Now I'm making mine." I looked at Nora. She was quiet, but her chin was up, her shoulders back. Not the invisible woman from the market, someone different, someone who'd found something worth fighting for. I left them there, rode back to town. And I thought about Sarah Hayes screaming in labor. Thought about Thomas pounding on my door. Thought about me standing behind that locked door, choosing my reputation over a woman's life. I'd killed Sarah Hayes, as surely as if I'd poisoned her. And now her husband was falling in love with another woman, a woman I'd also wronged. Nora's baby had been born struggling. I could have tried harder, could have fought, could have given that infant a chance. I let her die too. 2 women, 2 deaths, both on my conscience. And here they were, Thomas and Nora, building something from the ashes of my cowardice. I went home, poured whiskey, sat at my desk, counted my coins. Coward. The 4th week, the town made its move. Sunday after church, 3 women came to the ranch. Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house, Reverend Shaw's wife, and another woman I didn't know well. They came in a carriage, dressed fine, looking righteous. Nora was in the garden when they arrived. Thomas was checking the north fence line. "Nora," Mrs. Henderson called, sweet as poison. "We need to speak with you." Nora stood slowly, brushing dirt from her dress. "Mrs. Henderson, we've come to save you, dear, from this situation." "I don't need saving." "Of course you do." The Reverend's wife stepped forward. "You're living in sin, an unmarried woman alone with a man. It's unseemly, shameful." "I have my own room," Nora said. "I'm here to nurse Mr. Hayes's daughter, that's all." "That doesn't matter." Henderson's voice sharpened. "Appearances matter, and this appears very wrong. Then maybe you should look away." "We're here to take you back to the boarding house," the 3rd woman said. "For your own good, before you ruin what's left of your reputation." Nora felt something rise in her chest. Not fear, anger, clean, clear, righteous. "My reputation?" She laughed, hard. "You want to talk about my reputation? You stood by while my husband beat me. You whispered behind your hands when my baby died. You called me cursed. You made me invisible." She stepped forward. They stepped back. "Now I'm useful. Now I'm needed. Now I have a purpose. And you want to take that away. To save me? Nora's voice rose. You don't want to save me. You want to punish me for surviving, for being happy, for proving I don't need your approval to have worth. This is exactly what we were afraid of, Henderson said. You've been corrupted. That man has poisoned your mind against good Christian women trying to help. Good Christian women, Nora repeated. Where were you, good Christian women, when Sarah Hayes died? When Thomas begged for help and you all turned away? You let a woman die to teach her husband a lesson, and now you come here talking about morality? Sarah Hayes's death was a tragedy, the Reverend's wife said stiffly, but her husband's violence. He hit a man who was cruel to his wife once, one punch, and you sentenced Sarah to death for it. Nora's hands were shaking. You're the sinners, not me, not Thomas, you. Henderson's face went red. We're trying to help you, you ungrateful. Leave. Thomas's voice cut across the yard. He was walking toward them from the barn. His face was stone. Now. Mr. Hayes, we're only... I said leave. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. You're on my property. You weren't invited. You're not welcome. Go. The women looked at each other, then at Nora, then at Thomas. This isn't over, Henderson said. The town won't stand for this. Then the town can come talk to me themselves, Thomas said, instead of sending women to bully someone who's done nothing wrong. They climbed into their carriage, drove away. But not before Henderson called back, You'll regret this, both of you. After they left, Nora was shaking. Thomas put his hand on her shoulder. Gentle. You all right? I told them off. I heard. Sounded like you've been wanting to do that for a while. Since the market. Since they laughed when you asked me to help. Nora looked up at him. I'm not going back, Thomas. Whatever they do, I'm not going. Good. His hand was still on her shoulder. Because I don't want you to go. Why? The question hung between them. Heavy. Dangerous. Thomas took his hand away, stepped back. Because Grace needs you. Not the answer he wanted to give. Nora could see it in his eyes, but the answer he felt safe giving. Right, she said, Grace. I should get back to the fences. He left, walking fast, like he was running from something. Nora stood in the garden, heart pounding, knowing something had changed. Something was building, something inevitable and terrifying and maybe wonderful. That night, a storm rolled in. Big spring thunderstorm, the kind that comes up fast and hits hard, lightning cracking, thunder shaking the house, rain hammering the roof. Nora lay in her bed, trying not to be afraid, trying not to remember. But thunderstorms had been Jacob's favorite time. He'd be drunk, mean. The sound of the thunder would cover Nora's crying. No one would hear, no one would come. Lightning flashed, thunder crashed. Nora gasped, pulled her blanket up, hated herself for being afraid, for letting a dead man still have power over her. A knock on her door, soft. Nora? Thomas's voice. You all right? She couldn't answer, couldn't speak past the fear in her throat. Nora, I can hear you breathing. I know you're awake. Are you okay? I don't like storms. Silence. Then, can I sit with you? I won't come in, just outside your door, so you're not alone. Nora sat up, looked at the locked door, at the barrier she'd built, at the wall between them. She stood, walked to the door, put her hand on the lock. Thunder crashed. She flinched, but didn't move away. Nora? She unlocked the door, didn't open it, just unlocked it. The first time since she'd arrived. Thank you, Thomas said from the other side. She heard him sit down, back against the door, just like he'd said, outside, not in. When Sarah was alive, he said quietly, storms were my favorite. We'd sit on the porch and watch. She'd make up stories about where the thunder came from. What kind of stories? Nora asked. She sat on her side of the door, back against the wood, inches from him, separated by nothing but 3 boards and fear. Sky cattle stampeding, cloud giants moving furniture, silly things. His voice was warm with memory. She'd laugh. I'd pretend to believe her. It was nice. Thunder rumbled. Nora tensed. My husband, she said. When it stormed, It was when he was worst. The noise covered up the sound of... She couldn't finish. "I'm not him," Thomas said. "I know." "Do you?" Nora thought about it. About the past month. About the way Thomas asked before he came near her. The way he'd given her a room with a lock. The way he'd never once made her feel like she owed him anything. "Yes," she said, "I know." They sat like that through the storm, talking through the door. About nothing. About everything. About Sarah and the ranch and the way the grass looked after rain. About Nora's father and how he'd taught her to measure twice. About Grace and her first smile. About the future and the past and the strange present they were building together. Dawn came. The storm passed. Birds started singing. Thomas stood up. Nora could hear him, could hear his hesitation. "Thank you," she said, "for staying. Thank you for unlocking the door." He walked away, back to his room. Nora stood, looked at the unlocked door, at the barrier she'd lowered. Just a little, just enough. She wasn't ready to open it yet, wasn't ready for whatever came next, but she'd unlocked it. And that was something. That was everything. Monday morning, old Martha brought news. The town had a meeting Sunday night. After the women came back from the ranch, they'd voted, decided something needed to be done about Thomas and Nora. "What kind of something?" Thomas asked. Martha set her basket down. "They're planning to come for her. Sheriff Patterson's leading it. They'll claim you're keeping her against her will, force her back to town." "On what grounds?" "Morality." Martha's voice was bitter. "They'll say you're corrupting her, taking advantage, that she needs protection from you." "That's insane." "That's this town." Martha looked at Nora. "You should go to town, publicly. Show them you're here by choice. Confuse their narrative." "I'm not afraid of them," Nora said. "You should be." Martha's face was grim. "They're scared. And scared people are dangerous. They see you two building something good. It reminds them of their own sins, of Sarah dying while they watched. Of all the times they chose cruelty over kindness. You're proof they could have been better, and they hate you for it." After Martha left, Thomas paced. "Maybe we should get married," he said suddenly. Nora looked up from nursing Grace. "What?" "Married. That's what they want, right? To make it proper. If we married, they'd have to leave us alone." "Thomas, I'm not asking because I'm not saying we have to..." He ran his hand through his hair. "I'm saying if marriage would solve this, would make them back off, we could do it. A practical arrangement. You'd be protected. Grace would be protected. The ranch would be protected." Nora felt something crack in her chest. A practical arrangement. Not love, just protection. "No," she said. "No? If I marry again, it won't be for protection. It won't be to make other people comfortable. It'll be because..." She stopped. Couldn't say it. Not yet. Not when he'd just offered her a business transaction. "Because why?" "Because I want to." She looked down at Grace. "And right now, I don't want to." It was a lie. She did want to. Wanted it desperately. But not like this. Not as a solution to a problem. Not as a way to appease a town that had already proven it didn't deserve their consideration. Thomas nodded, looked hurt, looked relieved, both at once. "Okay," he said, "then we face them unmarried. Together?" "Together." But Nora could feel it, the pressure building, the town closing in. The storm that was coming was bigger than weather, was bigger than gossip. Something was going to break, soon, and she didn't know if what they were building was strong enough to survive it. That week passed in strange tension, waiting for the town to act, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Thomas taught Nora to ride the old mare. She was terrified at first, afraid of falling, afraid of being that high up, that exposed. But Thomas was patient. His hand steadied her, his voice calmed her, and slowly she learned to trust the horse, to trust herself. They rode out to check the cattle together, Nora on the mare, Thomas on his gelding. Grace strapped to Nora's chest in a sling. The land was beautiful, rolling grassland, creek running silver, mountains purple in the distance, big sky overhead, endless, empty, free. "This is what Sarah and I wanted," Thomas said, and to build something here, something that would last, something we could pass down to our children. You still can, Nora said. Grace will have this. She'll know her mother wanted it for her. Her mother wanted her to have a family, Thomas said quietly, not just land. He looked at Nora. She looked back. The words neither of them could say hung in the air between them, heavy, real, terrifying. Thomas, I know, he said. We're not ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. But Sarah's diary said I should love again. And I think maybe I'm starting to. Nora's breath caught. I'm not saying this right, Thomas said. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I just wanted you to know that you're not just the woman who nurses my daughter. You're Nora, and I see you. And Grace started crying. Perfect timing. Breaking the moment before it could become something neither of them knew how to handle. They rode back to the ranch, fed Grace. Didn't talk about what Thomas had almost said. But that night, Nora left her door unlocked. Not open, but unlocked. And Thomas walked past it, paused, put his hand on the wood, but didn't open it, not yet. Not when the town was circling, not when everything was already so fragile. They weren't ready for that door to open. But they were getting closer. Friday the axe fell. 2 men rode up to the ranch, drunk, angry. The ranch hands Thomas had fired 3 weeks earlier for insulting Nora. Thomas was in the north pasture. Nora was alone with Grace. She heard them before she saw them. Loud voices, slurred words, the sound of men looking for trouble. "Where's the fat widow?" one of them called. "We got business with her." Nora put Grace in her cradle, went to the window. 2 men, swaying on their horses, whiskey bottles in their hands. "Mr. Hayes isn't here," she called. "You should leave." "Don't want Hayes, want you." The man dismounted, stumbled toward the house. "You cost us wages, cost us jobs. Figure you owe us something." Fear shot through Nora. She locked the door, backed away. The man rattled the handle. "Come on out, fatty. Let's have a talk." The other man got down from his horse, came to the window. "He ain't here to protect you now, just you and us. Time to pay what you owe." Nora grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace, held it tight. If they came through that door, she'd fight. She'd learned from Jacob, learned what men were capable of. But she'd also learned she could fight back. The door rattled harder. They were trying to force it. Nora screamed, loud, long, praying Thomas would hear, praying someone would hear. "Shut up!" One of them hit the door, hard. "No one's coming for you, fat whore, worthless." A gunshot cracked the air. Everything stopped. Thomas stood 20 yards away, rifle raised, eyes wild. "Get your hands off my door." The men stumbled back, hands up. "Thomas, we were just—" "I know what you were doing." Thomas cocked the rifle again. "You touched my property, threatened my family. I should kill you both where you stand." "Your family?" One of them laughed. "Drunk stupid. She ain't your wife, she's just some fat—" Thomas aimed at his feet, fired. Dirt exploded. The man jumped back, fell. "Next one goes in your chest," Thomas said. His voice was dead calm, terrifying. "Get on your horses. Get off my land. If I ever see either of you again, I won't fire a warning shot. I'll aim for your hearts." The men scrambled onto their horses, rode off fast, cursing, threatening revenge, but riding away. Thomas lowered the rifle slowly. His hands were shaking. Nora came out, still holding the poker, still ready to fight. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, both realizing how close that had been. Thomas dropped the rifle, crossed to her in 3 long strides, pulled her into his arms. "When I heard you scream," his voice broke, "I thought I'd lost you, like I lost Sarah. I thought, I'm here. I'm safe." Nora held him, let herself be held. For the first time, let herself need him back. "I can't do this anymore," Thomas said into her hair. Nora pulled back, heart sinking. "I'll leave tomorrow." "No," Thomas cupped her face. "I can't pretend you're just a worker. Pretend I don't need you more than air. Pretend I'm not falling in love with you." Nora's world stopped. I love you, Nora, Thomas said. I'm in love with you, and I can't keep hiding it. I won't. Thomas, marry me, not to appease the town, not as protection. Marry me because I love you, because I want to wake up next to you, because I want to build a life with you, because you're the bravest, strongest, most capable woman I've ever known, and I don't want to do any of this without you. Tears streamed down Nora's face. The town will... I don't care what they think. Do you love me? Yes. It came out as a sob. Yes, I love you. Then marry me. When? Tomorrow. Today. Right now. I'm done waiting. I'm done hiding. I'm done letting this town tell me who I can love. Nora kissed him, desperate, claiming, finally letting herself want, letting herself be wanted. When they pulled apart, both were crying, both were laughing, both were terrified and exhilarated and free. Tomorrow, Nora said. We'll go to town tomorrow and marry. The town will lose their minds. Good. Nora grabbed his hand. Let them. We're done living by their rules. They went inside. Together. Closed the door against the world. And for the first time since either of them had lost everything, they felt something other than grief. Hope. Real hope. The kind that survives storms and town gossip and men with rifles. The kind that builds futures from ashes. But they didn't know yet. Didn't know that I'd been watching from the road, that I'd seen the men ride up, that I'd done nothing to help, that I'd been about to ride for the sheriff when Thomas appeared. They didn't know that tomorrow, when they went to town to marry, I'd finally have to choose. To speak up or stay silent one more time. To be the man I'd sworn to be, or the coward I'd become. They didn't know that their fight wasn't over, that the town had one more move to make, one more cruelty to inflict before they'd finally let them be. But I knew. I'd heard the whispers, seen the plans being made, and for the first time in my cowardly life, I'd have to decide what I was worth. Tomorrow. It would all come to a head tomorrow. Dawn broke cold and clear, the kind of spring morning that promises everything. I watched from my office window as Thomas Hayes hitched up his wagon. He moved with purpose, no hesitation. A man who'd made his decision and wasn't looking back. Nora came out of the house carrying Grace. She wore a blue dress I'd seen her wear to church before Jacob died. Simple, clean. Her hair was pinned up careful. She looked nervous, but her chin was up. They were really doing it, going to town to marry, despite everything. I'd spent the night awake, sitting at my desk, staring at the confession I'd written and thrown away 3 times, trying to find courage in the bottom of a whiskey bottle, finding only shame. Today, I'd have to choose, finally, after 43 years of choosing wrong. I put on my coat, walked out into that cold, clear morning, and I rode toward the reckoning I'd been avoiding my whole life. The Sunday crowd was gathering when Thomas's wagon rolled into town. Church had just let out. The whole population of our small settlement spilling into the square, women in their best dresses, men in clean shirts, children running between the groups, the weekly ritual of being seen, of judging, of deciding who was in and who was out. Thomas pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the courthouse. The conversations died. Heads turned. The silence spread like oil on water. Thomas climbed down, came around, helped Nora down. His hand was steady at her back. Grace bundled in Nora's arms, a family in everything but law. They started walking toward the courthouse steps. Sheriff Patterson pushed through the crowd, Mrs. Henderson beside him, righteous fury on both their faces. Thomas, Nora, the sheriff's voice carried. We need to talk. Thomas stopped. Morning, Sheriff. Mrs. Henderson filed a complaint. Says you're keeping Miss Nora against her will, living in sin, corrupting her. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for scandal, for confirmation of what they'd already decided was true. Thomas turned to Nora, loud enough for everyone to hear. Are you here against your will? Nora's voice didn't shake. No, I'm here to marry you. The crowd gasped, actually gasped, like in a stage play. Mrs. Henderson's face went purple. This is forced. He's coerced her. She doesn't know what she's saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," Nora said, clear, strong. "Nobody's forcing me. I choose him." "You can't possibly." "I can. I do. And I'm done asking your permission." Thomas took her hand, started up the courthouse steps. The crowd moved, not attacking, just shifting, closing in, the weight of collective judgment pressing down. Reverend Shaw stepped forward. "This is an abomination. This woman is unfit. This man is violent. I won't allow—" "You don't get a say," Thomas said, not loud, not angry, just fact. "You're not marrying us. The circuit judge is." "The judge won't marry you without witnesses," Shaw said. Smug. "And no one here will stand up for this. This sacrilege." Thomas looked around, at the crowd, at the faces of people he'd known his whole life, people who'd let his wife die, who'd mocked Nora, who'd turned their backs on a dying baby. "Then we'll go to the next town," he said, "and the next. We'll find someone with a spine." "You won't make it past the county line," someone called. "Everyone knows what you are." Thomas's hand tightened on Nora's, but he didn't rise to the bait, didn't lose his temper, just stood there, waiting. And that's when I stepped forward. Every eye turned to me. Dr. Edmund Walsh, respectable, educated. The man who'd delivered half the babies in this town, the man everyone trusted, the coward. "I'll witness," I said. The crowd erupted. "Doctor, you can't. This is madness. Your reputation." I walked through them, climbed the steps, stood beside Thomas and Nora. "I'll witness," I said again, louder. "And I have something to say first." Thomas looked at me, confused, grateful, wary. I turned to face the crowd, to face 43 years of accumulated cowardice. 20 years ago," I said, "Thomas Hayes came to my door, middle of the night. His wife was dying in childbirth. He begged me to come, begged me to save her." The crowd went silent. Thomas went very still. "I was there," I continued. My voice shook but held. "I heard him. I heard Sarah screaming. And I stood behind my locked door, and I didn't open it. I was afraid. Afraid you'd all punish me for helping the man who'd struck the Reverend. Afraid I'd lose patience, lose respect. So I let her die." Gasps, whispers, Shaw's face went white. "And 6 weeks later," I said, "I delivered Nora's baby, born struggling, cord wrapped tight. But there was a heartbeat, weak. But there. I could have tried harder, could have fought, could have given that child a chance." Nora made a sound, small, broken. "I didn't," I said. "I looked at that baby and I calculated, poor mother, dead father, no prospects. And I let the heartbeat stop. I told Nora it was stillborn. I lied." The words hung in the air, heavy, true, damning. "So when you stand there," I said, voice rising, "calling Thomas violent, calling Nora unworthy, calling their love sacrilege, remember this: I killed 2 people in this town through cowardice, and no one punished me. No one called me a monster. Because I was respectable, because I counted my coins and kept my head down and never made you uncomfortable." I pointed at Thomas. "This man has more honor in his smallest finger than I have in my whole body. He defended his wife when she was attacked. He fought for his daughter when she was dying. He loves a woman this town said wasn't worth loving. And he's done it all while you people threw stones." I turned to Nora. "And this woman, you called her cursed. You called her worthless. But she saved a baby I helped orphan. She rebuilt a ranch I helped destroy. She's braver than any of you because she chose to live, to hope, to love again. After everything." My voice broke. "You want to talk about sin? About corruption? Look in a mirror. Every single one of you let Sarah Hayes die. Let this town become a place where good people are punished and cowards like me thrive. That's your sin, not their love. Silence, complete, absolute." Then old Martha stepped forward, leaning on her walking stick. "I'll witness too." The blacksmith moved. And me, a farmer. Me, one by one, not everyone, not even most, but enough. Enough people who'd been silent finding their voices. Enough cowards finding a little courage. Sheriff Patterson looked at the crowd, at the shifting tide, at his own conscience, maybe. "The complaint is dismissed," he said. "Quiet. They can marry." The circuit judge stood in the courthouse doorway. He'd watched everything, old man, seen too much to be shocked by anything. "You still want to do this?" he asked Thomas and Nora. "Yes, sir," Thomas said. The judge pulled out his book. "Then let's make it legal before this town changes its mind again." We gathered on the courthouse steps. Thomas, Nora, Grace sleeping in Nora's arms, me, Martha, a handful of others who'd found enough courage to stand. The judge opened his book. "Thomas Hayes, do you take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." No hesitation, no doubt. "Nora Baker, do you take this man as your lawfully wedded husband?" Nora's voice was strong, clear. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory, I pronounce you husband and wife." He snapped the book shut. "Kiss your bride before they throw us all in jail for disturbing the peace." Thomas cupped Nora's face, kissed her, right there on the courthouse steps. In front of God and the town and everyone, not hiding, not ashamed, claiming her, claiming their right to love. The crowd made angry sounds, shocked sounds, but no one moved to stop it. When they pulled apart, Thomas turned to face everyone, arm around his wife, legal now, protected. "She's my wife now," he said. "Legally. Anyone got a problem with that?" Silence. The kind that admits defeat, even if it doesn't surrender. Mrs. Henderson pushed forward, red-faced, furious. "This doesn't change what she is, what you are. The town knows," Thomas interrupted, "that she saved my daughter when every one of you refused. She rebuilt my ranch. She made me want to live again. She's worth more than all of you combined. And I'm damn proud to call her my wife." He looked around, meeting eyes, daring anyone to challenge him. "One more thing," he said. "Anyone who insults my wife insults me. Anyone who threatens her threatens my family. And I protect my family, remember that." The threat was clear, the old Thomas, the angry one. But controlled now, channeled, protective rather than destructive. He helped Nora into the wagon, climbed up himself, took the reins. As they started to leave, he stopped once more, stood in the seat so everyone could see. "We're going home now," he said, "to our ranch, to our life. We're not asking your blessing. We're not seeking your approval. We're just telling you we're done living by your rules. We're done letting you decide what we're worth." He sat, drove away, through the silent crowd, through the judgment, through it all. Mrs. Henderson called after them, "You'll regret this." But Thomas didn't look back, neither did Nora. They just drove, away from the town, away from the poison, toward the life they'd built, despite everything. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching them go, feeling something I hadn't felt in 43 years, clean. That night I sat in my office, empty, alone. 3 patients had canceled. Mrs. Henderson spread the word. The doctor who'd confessed to letting Sarah Hayes die, who'd let a baby die, who'd stood up for the sinners. I'd lose more patients, maybe all of them. My practice might not survive. But I could look in the mirror again. For the first time in 20 years, I could look in the mirror. The next week, I rode out to the ranch. Thomas answered the door, wary. He hadn't forgotten my confession, hadn't forgiven it. Why should he? "I came to check on Nora," I said, "and to say something." He let me in. Nora was in the kitchen, nursing Grace. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes were cold. "I won't apologize," I said, "because sorry doesn't bring back your baby, doesn't bring back Sarah. Sorry is just a word cowards use to feel better about themselves." "Then why are you here?" Nora asked. "To tell you the truth. About why this town hated you so much." They both stopped, listened. "You think they hated you for living together unmarried," I said. "For Thomas's temper, for Nora's size. That's what they told themselves, but that's not why." I sat down, uninvited, but needing to say this. They hated you because you proved them wrong. Grace lived. That proved Sarah could have been saved if we'd helped. Nora thrived. That proved she wasn't cursed, just treated cruelly. You built a good life together. That proved you didn't need their approval to be happy. I looked at them both. You were living proof of this town's sins. Every time we saw you happy, we remembered the night we let Sarah die. Every time we saw Nora strong, we remembered calling her worthless. You were a mirror, and we couldn't forgive you for showing us what we really were. Thomas's jaw was tight. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't, but it's the truth. And you deserve the truth. Nora's voice was quiet. My baby, if you'd tried harder, would she have lived? I met her eyes. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, but she deserved the chance, and I didn't give it to her. That's on me. Forever. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. I can't undo what I did, I said. Can't bring them back. Can't erase 20 years of cowardice, but if you ever need me, for anything, I'll come, no matter what it costs me. I stood, started to leave. Doctor, Nora said. I turned. If I have another baby, will you deliver it? My breath caught. You'd trust me? No, her voice was hard. But I'll give you the chance you didn't give my daughter, to do better, to try harder, to fight. It was more grace than I deserved, more mercy than I'd earned. If that day comes, I said, I'll fight like it's my own child. I swear it. Thomas walked me out, stopped me at the door. Thank you, he said, for standing up. At the wedding. I know what it cost you. It cost me nothing. I should have paid that price 20 years ago. Still, thank you. I rode back to town, to my empty practice, to my damaged reputation, but I rode back lighter, cleaner, a coward trying to become something better. 2 years later, Nora went into labor with their second child. It was a difficult birth. The baby was breech. Nora was in pain for hours. Thomas was wild with fear, kept saying, not again, please God, not again. But I was there. And this time, I didn't calculate, didn't count the cost, didn't lock my door against someone's suffering. I fought. Turned the baby, talked Nora through it, refused to give up, refused to let another woman die in this town. Another baby die because I was afraid. Emma Hayes was born screaming, pink, alive, perfect. I held her. This second chance, this redemption I hadn't earned, but was being given anyway. Thomas cried. Nora cried. I might have cried too. She's healthy, I said. Strong. She's going to be fine. Nora took her daughter. Her second daughter. The one who lived. Thank you, she said to me, and meant it. That was 20 years ago. Now I'm 75, standing at my window, watching Grace Hayes' wedding. The baby I didn't save turned into a beautiful woman. Strong, happy, loved, about to start her own life. The baby I did save, Emma, is dancing with her older sister, 17 years old, full of life and fire. Thomas and Nora have 4 children total, all healthy, all raised with love. The ranch is thriving. They're respected now, not by everyone, but by enough. They're happy, despite us, despite me, despite everything this town did to stop them. I see them across the square. Nora says something. Thomas laughs. After 20 years, they still look at each other like they're the only 2 people in the world. They built something we couldn't destroy, something bigger than our cruelty, bigger than my cowardice. Thomas breaks away from his wife, walks across the square toward my office. My heart speeds up. After all these years, I still feel the weight of what I did, what I didn't do. He climbs my steps, knocks. I open the door. You came, he says. Wasn't sure I'd be welcome. You're always welcome. Thomas's face is weathered now, lined, but kind. You saved one of them, Emma. That counts for something. It doesn't erase the other 2. No, but it matters anyway. He pauses. Nora wanted me to ask you, will you dance with Grace? She wanted someone who was there the day we married, someone who stood up when it mattered. I'm too old to dance. Please, it would mean something. To all of us. I follow him down. across the square, to where Grace is laughing with her new husband. "Dr. Walsh," she says, her mother's kindness in her eyes. "Will you dance with me? I'm ancient, child, I'll step on your feet. Then I'll step on yours back." She takes my hand. "Please?" We dance, slow, careful, an old man and a young woman, while the town watches. "My parents told me you were very brave," Grace says, "the day they married, that you stood up when others wouldn't." I almost laugh. Brave. They'd rewritten history, made me a hero in their story when I was anything but. "Why would they tell you that?" I ask. "Because it's true. You made a mistake, but you fixed it when it counted. That's what brave is, not never falling, but getting up." Wisdom from a 20-year-old. Mercy I'll never deserve. The dance ends. Grace hugs me. "Thank you for everything." I go back to my office, sit at my window, watch the celebration. Thomas and Nora dance together, slow, easy, the rhythm of 20 years together, of building a life from ashes, of proving that love can survive anything if you're stubborn enough. Their children dance around them, 4 lives that shouldn't exist. 4 miracles born from 2 people the town said weren't worth saving. I'm an old man now, my hands shake, my eyes fail, my heart stutters and skips. I'll die soon. This year, next, not long, but I'll die knowing this: I saved hundreds of lives in 43 years. But the one that mattered most was Emma Hayes, born struggling, born to parents who gave me a chance I didn't deserve, born because I finally chose courage over comfort. That's what I'll carry into whatever comes next. Not the 2 I didn't save, but the one I did, and the mercy of 2 people who let me try. The sun sets over the town square, golden light painting everything soft. Thomas and Nora stand on their porch now, watching their daughter's celebration from a distance, content to let the young people have their moment. Grace dances with her husband. Emma dances with the blacksmith's son. The other children run wild, the way children should, a family built despite everything. Built because 2 broken people found each other and refused to stay broken. The town goes on around them. Some of the people who were cruel 20 years ago are gone now. Some have softened, some have apologized, some never will. It doesn't matter anymore. Thomas and Nora built their life, raised their children, proved that the ones society discards are sometimes the ones worth keeping, that love is bigger than judgment, that surviving is its own kind of victory. I close my window, sit at my desk one more time. I don't count my coins tonight, don't balance my ledger. I just sit, in the gathering dark, in the peace that comes from finally telling the truth. Tomorrow I'll wake up, see patients if they come, be the doctor I should have been 43 years ago, but tonight I rest. The ones I didn't save are gone. Sarah, Nora's first baby, that weight will never lift. But the ones I did save are dancing in the square, living, loving, building futures. And sometimes, if you're blessed, that's enough. Sometimes redemption isn't erasing what you did wrong, it's doing better when you get another chance, and being grateful when someone gives you that chance at all. Outside, the stars come out, the same stars that watched Sarah die, that watched a baby take her last breath, that watched 2 people fall in love despite everything. The same stars that will watch long after we're all gone, after this town is dust, after every sin and redemption is forgotten. But tonight, they watch a wedding, a celebration, a family that shouldn't exist but does. And if stars could speak, maybe they'd say what old Martha said to me once years ago: the world breaks everyone, but some people grow strong in the broken places. Thomas Hayes, Nora Hayes, their 4 impossible children, strong in the broken places, proof that love survives, that people can change, that the ones we throw away sometimes save us all. I'm 75 years old. I was a coward for most of my life, but I got to witness a miracle, and that's worth something. That's worth everything. The last light fades. The celebration continues. Music drifts on the evening air, and somewhere in the darkness, an old doctor sits at his window, watching the life he almost destroyed. Grateful he didn't. Grateful for the mercy of two people who taught him what courage looks like, and what it costs, and why it's worth it anyway.